So let's start with Mariana, shall we? Mariana, can you tell us, what did you like about your teaching? What did you dislike about your teaching? How do you feel about your students' reaction to your teaching? And how could you improve if you taught this lesson again?
Okay, what I did like is that I think I was able to be very patient with them when they weren't understanding. I like that I had the chance to get through all the stages, including the delayed error correction, and that they were able to use the yes, no answers and the questions as well during the freer practice task. I think that was something I liked. What did I dislike? I think I'm very nervous. I really don't like the TPs. They make me very nervous, and I just feel like I want to get it over with them. I think maybe I could have used. I tried to look for a simpler dialogue, and I tried to create one, but I think maybe I could have used some related, like they were related. The first dialogues and the next ones, I think they could have been related.
Why not you just use the one that was in the course book?
Yeah, but the one where they had to do the first task, I invented that one. The one of
Okay.
living in New York City.
All right.
I invented that one that I didn't get from any book. The
Okay, but
second test,
why not just use the materials from the course book?
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because it's, for one thing, you save yourself time with preparation. And the other thing is that when it comes to the language point, they're often linked together. So
Yeah,
the course book text is often linked to the language. So you can save yourself a lot of time and preparation if you just use the course book text. Yeah,
yeah,
the one that they show. So just consider that for future. Yeah, and
yeah.
that's what we have to do as teachers. Really, we have to use the materials that we're given.
Okay. How do you feel about your students' reaction to your teaching? Well, like I said, I think it's great that they were able to use the language that we were practicing.
Uh-huh.
Also, I would like to understand what was confusing about the instructions I was giving. I felt like it was okay, but I don't know what if they were. It was maybe the words, or maybe if I speak too fast. I don't know. I would like to understand better what was avoiding them to understand.
Uh-huh.
And how could you improve if you taught this lesson again? Well, I would like to be more clear about my instructions. Um, and I think the tasks were okay. But yeah, I think I would like to change the way I give my instructions. And maybe if I had more time, I would like them to practice the delayed error correction. The things that we discussed there, I would like for them to maybe, I don't know, keep asking themselves questions so they're keeping that correction in mind.
Uh-huh.
To be a bit less nervous so I wouldn't make more mistakes.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's switch to the Jamboard and see if any of these our teachers can comment on the stickies that they mentioned. Okay. So who wrote the yellow ones?
I did.
Go on, can you comment, please?
Yeah. Well, I said that you're very patient with your students, and that is always nice to see. And I also think that you had pretty useful tasks for them to learn.
Okay,
Good.
thank you very much.
What do you mean by pretty useful tasks?
I think they had, I mean, I don't want to say a good time, but they actually, I don't know how could I say it. Yeah, I think it was a good tool for them to actually um, learn a bit better the topic of the lesson.
Okay, good. I'll just give you a few tips, Mariana, about applying this text-based framework. So my recommendation is don't begin by talking about the language point, right? Instead, try and get them interested in the topic. So if the topic is living in different cities, start with a lead in that says, okay, how would you feel if you lived in New York, or if you moved to New York or Cancun or some other place like that, right? So try and get them interested in the topic first, right? Or so that it activates background knowledge about the text or helps them to understand the text. When asking a GIST question, give them options or make it simpler. Don't ask open questions with beginners, right? So is it about living in a new city or living in a small town, right? That's a simple GIST question. Now read for 1 to 2 minutes and find out the answer. Right? That's your GIST, as easy as that. Yeah, instructions, yes, could be simpler. Try maybe writing them out on your lesson plan and ask some instruction checking questions. Sometimes it can help to share the screen for the activity that you want them to do. I liked the way you had the example sentences on the board as you focused on the form. Just make sure that these are taken from the text so you keep the link with the context. I didn't see any pronunciation work. Be careful with the accuracy of your explanation. I think at one point you said plural he or she has s. I think you mean the singular he or she has s. I think it was just maybe a slip. Ask questions to clarify the meaning before you start on form. What is the time reference? Is it the past, the present, or the future? Are we talking about the past, present, or the future? And it was the present, wasn't it? The control practice was well designed, useful. Try and make the freer practice a bit more useful, purposeful. How many questions do they have to ask? Could they be asked to find something in common or guess the answers? Guess whether the answers were true or false. Maybe they had to make up a false answer. And so their partner had to try and guess which one was false. You know, that can be a way of making the freer practice a bit more interesting and purposeful. But you provided time for freer practice, and there was some accurate language feedback. Good. So obviously a pass. Well done.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now, same role for Ilse. Ilse, you're still there. Good. Okay, so can you tell us, what did you like about your teaching? What did you dislike about your teaching? How do you feel about your students' reaction to your teaching? How could you improve if you taught this lesson again?
Okay, I liked about my teaching that I think I improved when it comes to giving instructions. And I also liked the interaction between the students and me. So that was nice. The thing that I dislike about my teaching is that I get really, really nervous and confused at all times. This particular one was a bit harder for me. I guess because of the grammar stuff. How do I feel about students' reaction? I think it was pretty nice and it was very interactive and they were pretty proactive as well. And how could I improve? I think I would set a better timing for me to develop the lesson and maybe try to be clearer with my lesson stages. So that's why I think what I think.
Okay. Good. Let's switch over to Ilse's Jamboard. Okay, who wrote the pink ones?
I did.
Please go ahead.
Well, I think they understood the topic very well, so they were able to answer the tasks, and that shows that you gave a clear lesson. And checking mistakes would have been helpful, but I understand that sometimes we only have 40 minutes, so it's actually a very short time.
Thank
And
you, Mariana. Sorry.
we lost track of time. No, that's okay. But I think the important part is that they were able to understand the topic, and it showed when they were able to answer all the tasks you gave them.
Good. All right, let me give a few pointers. Like with the Marianas, I think the lead in could be more about activating background knowledge about the text or helping them to understand the text, which is about Jonathan, a British guy, right? Who liked egg and bacon for breakfast. So why not start your lead in with breakfasts in different parts of the world? So Mexican breakfasts and British breakfasts. You know, what do you think people like to? We all know what Mexicans like to have for breakfast, like chilaquiles and tortillas and eggs, right? But what do they have in Britain? Do you think they have anything in common? They both eat eggs often, right? So then make your gist questions simpler. You had 4 rather difficult questions that made the students read the text in detail rather than gist. Remember, gist is overall comprehension of the text. It's all about activating top-down reading processes. So it's all about general understanding, right? Make them simple. It should be done faster, 1 to 2 minutes. Just the skim reading, with maybe 4 minutes overall for the setting up of the task and the feedback. My wife has just shown me this text, breakfast around the world. That's good. Okay. So then you with the text-based framework, there's the intensive. So could they highlight all the nouns in the text and then maybe categorize them into countable for uncountable before the meaning stage, before you work on the meaning? So that would be an opportunity for them to for you to see how much they already know about countable and uncountable nouns. Did you check the meaning? I think you need to convey the difference between mass, okay, that's uncountable, and granular. Yeah. So you tend to define it in terms of the existing terminology. So countable, well, you can count them, right? But it's not just that, it's about mass versus granular. All right. And I think there was some confusion caused. For example, you can count beans and you can count mushrooms, so they're not countable nouns. So they're not uncountable nouns, they're countable, right? Usually if it's got an S and it can take a plural verb, then it's countable. There's 1 or 2 exceptions like news, right? News is actually uncountable and it takes a singular verb. So the news is terrible, right? So we use the singular verb there. But we can't use indefinite articles with uncountable nouns. So we can't say our news is terrible. You could say I received a terrible if you want to make it countable, then you've got to add something to it. I received a terrible piece of news. All right, so that's got to be the stuff that you include in your teaching. What verbs go with it and what articles go with it. Okay. And I think in your teaching, you tended to focus on things that weren't that relevant. So, for example, you said, "Why my favorite meal is breakfast." Right? Why go into that if the target language is uncountable and countable nouns? Other things. Oh yeah, what pronunciation feature did you want them to notice? I think it was nice that you were getting the students to repeat some of the language, but it needs to be more focused on things that are related to countable and uncountable nouns, like orange juice, and the difficulties they would have with the j sound. Orange juice. Yeah, Spanish speakers would have problems with that. It was nice to see you using Google Forms for the control practice. You could also consider that using that for the gist task, so you could see how well they responded. You gave them plenty of time for the fluency practice, and you gave them some feedback on their ideas, but try to give some delayed error correction. The freer practice, it was personalized because they were talking about their own breakfasts. But maybe you could get them to, I don't know, maybe report back at the end and ask the students, did they have anything in common about the breakfasts that they like? All right. But overall, I think it was a safe pass because you had a text, you had a context, you had some relevant focus on form, you tried to work on pronunciation, you had control practice, so well done.
Thank you.
Good. Now we can focus a little bit on what we're doing next week. Okay, so next week it's I believe Adriana is going first. Is that right?
Yes, teacher.
Okay. Okay, so it's page 12 to 13 of the student's book. Let me just put this on the whiteboard now.
Okay.
Well, let's clear this. Adriana, here we are. So it's speaking lesson. So the idea is that you need to give them plenty of time to do speaking. Right?
Okay.
So now the speaking framework is kind of simple.
Okay.
It's usually we've got a lead in, and then we use a model text or dialogue. We can do, we don't always have to, but then we need to give them some useful language, which is often found in the text. And productive task, maybe 10 to 15 minutes of extended speaking. That would be desirable. How can we extend the speaking? Well, we can get them to work in pairs in breakout rooms, and then after a few minutes, change the pairs so they're working with a different partner. And at the end, we need to give some feedback on their content of their ideas and the actual language. So work is going to be based on page 12 to 13 of the student's book, which is the book is it's cutting edge, isn't it? Pre-intermediate. You've all got or links to the book, right? If not, I'll share it with you again. There it is. So the reference here is 12 to 13 of the book. So you've got this I would suggest like basically going with the material that you have here. Use this Orlando Bloom fact file. Yeah. As it's adult learners, we all know who adult Orlando Bloom is, right? The younger learners may not know who Orlando Bloom is, but we've all seen like Lord of the Rings, right? Señor de los Anillos. And the Pirates of the Caribbean. So I think we could go with that. Yeah,
Teacher
you
Andrew,
could,
could you, excuse me, teacher, could
yeah.
you send us the link, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to send it to you directly, okay? This book. Just give me a second.
Yes, teacher.
All right, you've got it there. New Cutting Edge Students Book. Can you look in the chat?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So your lead-in can be about Orlando Bloom. What do you know about him? All right, then so you make a list of things you know or 5 questions about him, and then actually use that as a way to read the text. All right, and you've got to confirm the answers by reading the text for gist. Right. And then number 3 is quite useful there. Work out what questions the interviewer asked Orlando Bloom, so that you could use that stage to elicit from the students some useful questions to ask in an interview. All right, so that's then any other questions that they don't come up with, you can give them or teach. And the useful language here is the box here, page 13. Now, as it's speaking, you could work a little bit on pronunciation of these questions. Normally, when we don't know the answer to a question, it's a real question, the intonation goes up. So perhaps you could model some of these questions. Have you got a nickname? Who's your favorite singer? Tell me about your hobbies. All right, so use some visual clues with arrows going up. Maybe drill up that a little bit. Okay, so so once you've worked a bit on the The useful language, then you can actually set the speaking task. They're going to interview each other and they've got to complete a fact file like this on number 2 on page 13. You could get them to actually write their answers on a Google Doc. Yeah, make a table like this on Google Docs and give each student their own Google Doc, and they've got to interview each other and complete the fact file about their partner. And you as the teacher, you're going to be listening out for maybe problems with these questions that the students might have so that you can give some feedback at the end. Does that make sense?
Yes, teacher.
Any questions? Queries or doubts?
So I'm going to focus the next lesson for all of these pages, and it's going to focus all the speaking, right?
That's right. So please do use the material that's presented here. Yeah. Now, don't spend too much time with teaching vocabulary. Yeah, what you need to be focused on is the useful language that will permit them to do the speaking task. Yeah, you may have to clarify a few doubts that they may have. Like height. What's height mean? How is it pronounced? And how that relates to tallness, right? How tall are you? That relates to height, doesn't it? Just check that there's no like British expressions that they might have problems with, like, well, films and movies, aren't they? There's British materials. Manchester United. We all know who Manchester United is.
¿Quieres un mango, no? Sí. Ven por el.
Gap clothes. I think we know those. Okay.
Okay.
Now, next person is Scarlett. Scarlett, you're doing
Original postcard.
it's a postcard. Now, when you're so first thing is to find a model, right? A model postcard.
Okay.
So it's actually on page 87. There's a model that you could use. Because we need to provide them with an example of a good example of a postcard. Oh, 57. I don't see this postcard anywhere. Where is it? Ah, yes. It's module 6. There we go. Ah, here we are. It's page 60. Page 60 of this book, New Cutting Edge. And here's an example of a postcard. Now, in your lead in, you could use this picture of the Opera House in Sydney, in Australia. Maybe in your lead in, you could ask them, what do you know about Sydney, Australia? What things does it have? What things, maybe you could put some things like Harbour Bridge, Opera House. What maybe one thing it doesn't have? It doesn't have a tower, right? Like in Paris. So maybe then you get them to read the text, and a just question could be like, is Paul still in Australia? Oh no. Or is he still in Thailand? Yeah, simple just question. The answer would be no, because he's now in Australia.
Okay.
Then you could do this exercise 1A. That's quite good. So now they've got to read in detail, a bit more detail, and choose the correct expression to go in the postcard. Which do you think is suitable for A? Is it "Hi Tim" or "Dear Mr. Buchanan"? Because that's a way of focusing their attention on the appropriate language to go in a postcard, right? Which is informal.
Layout of the postcard.
Yeah. That's quite a good activity. So I would think I would go with that one.
Yeah.
A and B.
Ya se subió hasta el techo de la vitrina. Pegó un pegasalto. Y ahora no sabe cómo
And
bajar.
I mean, you could do a little bit more on the language work, but you don't have to. You've only got 40 minutes. So I would use this number 2 as the instructions for your writing. And it's good that you have these different these elements that they have to include. Name and address of the person you're writing to. You know, I would be tempted not to include that, you know, because it doesn't really help them with the writing skill. I would include a greeting, where you are now and some information about it, other places you visited, and signing off. Yeah. So in their writing, they've got to include those 4 items. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, for the writing tool, you could consider using a Google Slides. I'm just going to show you how I used this recently. Writing lesson. For a writing lesson of my own.
Okay.
Okay, so let me show you. For a recent writing lesson I did with elementary level students, the students had to write a profile of themselves, right? So first, I got them to read this, answer the question, what does Andrew want you to do? He wants you to write to him. Now, the content of the text is all about things you like, you love, and you hate. So I got the students to brainstorm some ideas. Then I got them to read a model text and answer a just question about it.
Okay.
So they understood about what the text looks like. Then we focused a little bit on the layout of the writing and some of the linkers so that they could construct sentences, right? So that was the language work. But then the writing, actual writing they did on Google Slides. Each student had their own slide. Yeah, and they were given 10, 15 minutes to write 3 to 4 short paragraphs about themselves, as if they were going to write it for an internet post. At the end of the time, they had to read a classmate's piece of writing and evaluate it. Did it include these things? So that gave them a reason for reading each other's writing.
Okay.
And so that the students could give feedback to each other on the content. So that was the student's job. My job was to correct some of the language at the end.
Okay.
Right? Like all the students made mistakes with articles. Right? I'm child psychologist. I'm teacher of public administration. I'm systems engineer. They needed to say I'm And I also corrected some things related to liking, loving, and hating. Right?
Okay.
Right? So
Thank
that's
you.
the structure of your lesson.
Thank you. Got it.
So let me put a little summary on the board. And maybe take a screenshot of this if you wish. Here it is. Does that make sense?
Of course. Yep. Thank you. It was very helpful. Good.
Now, Adriana. Oh, sorry, it's Mariana, isn't it, next?
Yeah, yeah, it's-
Mariana, you're doing describing people.
and it's
This is
speaking,
going to
right?
page 48, speaking, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's have a look. It's like one of these, you know, that game Adivina Quién. Have you heard of that game Adivina Quién, when you've got to
Guess who?
kind of guess who? Yeah, it's a bit like that, but it's the speaking task is basically very similar to that. And so there's a situation where there's been a robbery, a theft, right? And the idea is that you've got to look at the role play cards and follow the instructions, page 142 and 145, and then describe. Well, one of them is going to be the detective, and the other person is going to be the witness, and the witness has to describe the subject.
Okay.
And then at the end, you've got to decide which was the correct person, right? So if you look at the material 142, these are the different description, different pictures.
That's 142, but
140, sorry, yeah. That is the actual person who committed the robbery. Right? Mm. Now, the important thing is that you give them useful language so that they can do the task. So that's what the teaching input is going to be. So we look on page 48 or 49, and here's the useful language.
okay.
So we need to, that's what you need to teach. Maybe you could use a Jamboard to have these questions or descriptions on sticky notes, and they've got the students could actually divide them into expressions for describing the subject, expressions for asking about the subject. Now, you're not going to have too much time. You're not going to have very much time to give them lots of vocabulary.
Right. So
because there's 40 minutes, right? So your teaching is going to be the useful language more than anything, right? You could give them a little language bank with some key words on it, like blonde hair, big nose, right? Blue eyes, brown eyes, so on.
what could I do for the leading and the exposure?
The leader, you need to do this preparation work, right? So setting the scene. So it's 140. 142 and 45.
Yeah, but it was actually 140, right?
That's where the picture is.
Mhm.
145. I think you'll find that there is. Here are the instructions, right? Group A, witnesses. So you're going to divide your students into witnesses and detectives. And they're each going to need to read these role play cards. It's effectively a role play, right? So last Saturday, you came home from your apartment building. At the same time, thieves stole some diamonds from one of the apartments. Police believe that you were in the lift, the elevator at the same time as one of the thieves. And you want to give a description of this person. So turn to page 140 to see a picture of the man you saw. You have 2 minutes to look at the picture and remember the man's face. Then discuss in a group how to describe him. Think about age. These are items, right? So that's the witnesses. Now the detectives, they have a different role play card.
I think it's page 145.
What did it say? What do the detectives have to do? Police officer. Police officer should look at
145, it says. Read the card on group A, read 140.
145. Yeah. So police officers. Thieves stole some diamonds. You know that one of the thieves used a lift or the elevator. You're going to interview a witness.
Is there any other topic I could do?
You should be able to do this fine with these students.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not too low level, so I think it's good though because it will. It's like an information gap, and this is this is like the essence of a speaking
Okay.
lesson. Is that you've got to give a reason for communicating. All right, and it's the exchange of information between the two students that's going to make them speak. But it's going to be a useful exercise because it'll make you realize what is it that makes students speak. Got to give them a reason for speaking. And you should be able to do it with these students because at least one of them, they're all adults, they're pretty smart. So this would be more difficult to do if it was for with kids, right? Because they would say things like, "Teacher, I don't understand how to do it," but you'll find that your colleagues, because they are also teachers, they will help you. So have a go at it, yeah? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. The main thing is just to give them time to do the speaking, yeah? Give them preparation time. And work on your instructions. Figure out very carefully what instructions you're going to give. Yeah?
Okay.
Figure out how you're going to do it. Like, so do they need to spend time in breakout rooms talking together? Yeah, in groups, in the same group before then you split them into witnesses and police officers.
Okay.
And then give them some feedback on how well they performed.
Okay.
And any feedback on the language, which would be these useful expressions. All right. I think you'll do it just fine. Okay, I think we're just about ready to finish then, because we've done all we need to do. Any further questions or doubts before we conclude?
Can we send the
Drafts?
planner, the drafts to you, or it's supposed to send it to Vicky?
Could you send it to Vicky? Because I'm not going to be here next week. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second.
I've got
Okay,
an-
teacher.
I've got some IELTS exams to do next week. Okay, but I will post this recording on the platform so you can review it. All right. All right. So if there's no further questions, then we'll finish.
Yeah.
Because we've done everything we need to do.
Thank you.
Que tengan bonito sábado.
Thank you. You too. Have a nice Saturday.
Well,
Descansen.
thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good one.
Bye.
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 Thank you, tutor.